Hey there, Dango Stu here. Today's video is about fixing an outboard that has some water in the fuel, as well as making some more improvements to Renko, and is proudly sponsored by marineengine.com. At the beginning of this week I had to row Red Dwarf back to Renko because the little Tohatsu conked out, so I'll begin by showing you that. I think I'm going to roll it round to Renko with his tools and stuff and give it the once over there. Alright, I'll grab the outboard, just mount it on the bulwark. Don't think it's really heavy enough to warrant getting the crane out. I'm always torn which way round to go. The advantage the other way is it's easy to pull start, but this way is easier to get to everything. So we might do it this way to start with, then turn it around when we're trying to start it. I would actually go through a full service on this, and I will soon, but obviously I don't have the kit because this just happened, you know, randomly now. So we'll kind of get it going, but I will get, you know, oil filters, impellers, all that kind of stuff, gaskets. First thing I'm going to do is take this internal fuel tank out because the nut for this kill switch has come off, so I can fetch it out, put it on properly, then we'll just put it back. This is the little nylon nut here, so I'll just tighten it up. Being nylon, don't know if we can Loctite or anything. I actually have no idea what the answer to that question is, can you or not, but let's do it. I can't see it hurting, and then we'll just snug it up nice and tight. Alright, one thing that's been annoying me for a long time, fixed. One thing I noticed trying to get it started out on the water was that if you swap to the internal tank and squeeze the primer bulb, you actually fill the internal tank. So it's kind of interesting to know for future reference. If I want to fill it, I can actually be filling that from the bowser, give it a few squirts, fill this, then keep filling that one, and you're done. You don't have to open this. What I originally suspected with this was low oil. It was quite low, so I thought maybe it was the low oil sensor cutting the spark. So I put some oil in and it's still not running. Obviously I neglected it way too long, my bad. It just becomes a workhorse, you focus on the trawler, but it needs some love too. So I'm actually going to suck all the old oil out, put fresh oil in, even though I don't have the oil filter yet. Yes, I know, not ideal, but I just want to rule that out while we diagnose what's wrong with it. Then I'll change the oil again. No big deal, it doesn't take much. I don't even know if it's got a drain plug, does it? It actually came with a owner's manual, we should read that, shouldn't we? Alright, where are we? Oil change. Alright, so apparently this here is the oil drain. Kinda kooky. Anyway, let's see what happens. Starts to tuck in a little bit. Oh, now it's going to dribble everywhere. Alright, the last dribble's pretty much straight down anyway, so that's okay, and got the bit of spilt. It's alright, a bit of rust preventative, that's alright. That's what you need on a steel boat. Alright, let's just keep that running for a little bit. Has been missing the old workshop days when we had 1 million of every single copper and aluminium washer known to man, but that's okay. I'm sure it won't leak. Let's see what it says about the filter. There's good news and bad news. The good news is it doesn't look like it has an oil filter. The bad news is that means I probably should have been replacing the oil a lot more frequently than I have been, given how many hours I put on it. Anyway, live and learn. Let's do it now and the oil can stay in. So drain plug back in. I don't have a new sump plug washer, so we'll just turn it over. It's a bit scored on that side. It's pretty good on the other side. It's just like your undies on a Wednesday, you know. We didn't use the vacuum pump, but we'll just tip it in here to keep it safe anyway. Now, do I have anything on board for measuring oil? Make life a bit easier. Anglem oil, we're just up the road from us at Mount Karingai, so local manufacturer, we use theirs. 4-stroke marine engine oil, and 10W40 is perfect for the temperatures we get here. If you're in colder temperatures, they say 10W30, but this is good for Sydney. What do the destructions say? They say 450 mils. All right, that's 450. Yeah, definitely a bit more than I took out, so I must have overfilled it when I was thinking that was the problem. But now the thing that's interesting about this, and maybe where I thought it was oil, the problem was oil, was that there's no explicit mention. Yeah. So it looks with this engine like the oil filler cap needs to be threaded in to get the level. A lot of engines for ease, and I think it makes sense, the filler cap's sort of rested on. You check a level, when it's right you screw it in, but it looks like with this one it's tested, screwed all the way in. Given this engine doesn't have an oil filter, I've actually bothered to clean the funnel. Actually, I'm going to pull it over a couple of times just to turn the oil pump, although it's probably full anyway, but just before I finally check the level. We'll check it after it's run too. Yeah, I think it's a little low. I don't have a new fuel filter, but I am going to undo this one and just blow through it, see what comes out. That looks a lot like water to me. We've had loads of rain lately, so I think the reason we stopped isn't... Yeah, I mean, I don't know, you get an eye for it eventually. Water just looks so different to fuel, the way it beads and... I don't know, it's really hard to describe, but that's so definitely water. That's why it's stalled. Anyway, that's an easy problem to fix. All right, I'm gonna squeeze the prime bulb, but you've got to depress this little check valve in order to get fuel out. So let's find something to do that with. You can see there, hopefully, see the two layers, the water layer on the bottom and the fuel layer on the top. Gonna use a step drill this time because it's shorter and means we won't spill quite as much. Still looks very cloudy. I'm going to let it sit for a while, see if it separates. That's the second batch, more water in the bottom. Same amount of water again. Keep going, I guess. You can see in this one there's a much smaller amount in the bottom. We'll do it one more time and then I think we'll just put an additive in the fuel and call it good. Now, we're going to have water in this tank for sure because, as I was saying before, I discovered that if you set it and, you know, squeeze the prime bulb, you fill this tank. So water is going to have got from this tank into that tank, so let's undo it again and tip all the fuel out of this one. I suddenly came to my senses and realised I'm only going to put it in here anyway, so let's just suck it all out. This is the additive I'm going to put in. It's a Worth product. So many problems with water and fuel with outboards. We used to buy this by the box load. So the whole bottle treats 100 litres, so we don't need a lot. I'm going to put a little bit directly into that small fuel tank just to treat the water in the bottom of it that I didn't manage to suck out. I don't think it's much, but little splash isn't going to hurt. Then I'm going to put a fair bit in the main fuel tank, and then we're going to start flushing it through the fuel system. All right, before I forget, let's just check our oil level again. Now it's been resting for a while, draining. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay, now what I want to do is start running all the contaminated fuel that came up to the fuel filter. So from the fuel filter to the tank, I'm almost thinking, how close are these two sizes? Pretty close, I reckon. I'm going to try and put the pump into here, put the clamp on it, get some vacuum, squeeze the bulb. All right, perfect. It's not often things work out like this. It's going to be a different week to last week. I can feel it already. Okay, so a little bit of suction. Oh, there we go, it's coming through already. Let's squeeze the primer bulb, get some fuel through. So we're just flushing treated fuel through the whole fuel system to this point. Alright, that ought to do it. This is actually getting full now anyway. Now, I'm not saying it's been perfect, but we do have clean fuel that was treated to the outlet of the fuel pump. Now let's drain the carburettor. We're probably going to have to clean the carburettor. It's a funny thing with water. You think, oh yeah, I've cleaned it, it'll go away, but those little droplets of water just sit on the jets and they don't move. The fuel cure will help, but it's amazing how often you actually do have to manually clean the carburetors, unfortunately. But don't do it unless you have to. Don't make life hard for yourself. Little drain screw for the bowl here. All right, we've got a lot of water and fuel out of the carburetor bowl now. Next thing I'm going to do is put the fuel filter back in line and then run fuel through from the tank, the treated fuel once again, and just let it flow out the carburetor bowl before we put that back in. Still not super impressed. There's definitely water in the bottom there still. Let it finish draining and then try again. There's a tiny bit of water that time, so we're getting there. But let's do an experiment. Let's put some fuel cure straight into there, see what happens. You know, 300 mils treats 100 litres. That's actually quite a lot for that amount of fuel. All right, I think I'm being suitably impressed. It's funny, having bought lots of this stuff over the years and used it on blind faith, I almost didn't expect that to work, but seems like it does a pretty good job. I'm now totally sold on that stuff. So, also gives me faith in using the treated fuel to flush the old system. So let's keep doing that for a little bit. And then the kit that came with the outboard actually came with a new spark plug. So we may as well throw that in, given the other one's over a year old. Never seen that before. CDPR 6E. Interesting. Anyway, let's get the old one out and see what that looks like first. Reasonably small spark plug, 16mm socket for this one. It's not too eaten away and not too fouled up. A little bit, kind of light brown. Might just check the gap on it. These feeler gauges have got a bit of corrosion on them, but yeah, the gap's definitely opened up a little bit. That one's quite tight at a 0.8. Alright, it says the gap should be between 0.8 and 0.9. The old plug. Yes, I know these feeler gauges out in salt air are not going to be super accurate with the corrosion. This is a 0.8 and this is a 0.9. So it looks like the new one's sitting around 0.8. And the old one's opened up to about a 0.9. Yeah. Alright, let's pop the new one in. Going to put a tiny bit of anti-seize on the spark plug thread. These have a crush washer, and most of the boxes will tell you. So this is a pretty generic instruction for the MKG get a finger tight, then do a 1/2 to 2/3 turn for this crush washer type. So I'll just go till it's snug. There we go. That'll do. There. Done. Okay, let's see whether we can get this thing started or whether we're going to need to take the carburettor off and clean it. Alright, I'm going to spin it around now so it's easier to pull start it, given we're getting to the pointy end. Now, I threw the lanyard on deck somewhere, didn't I? Just run it. I think the more we run it, the better it'll get. Purring like a kitten. Don't stall on me. Keep going. Definitely needs a run. Anyway, better than it was. I think once it really runs for a bit, get that treated fuel through, we'll be right. If it keeps doing that, we'll take the carb off. Let's see if it fires up again. Yes. Hull's very dirty at the moment, need to clean Red Dwarf again, but I'm going to call that a win, nice and easy, no carburettor clean. Tohatsu's been running well since I drained the water out of the fuel, didn't need a carb clean, it's been good. The treated fuel obviously is flowing through the jets, so let's clean those, but just pulled the lanyard out and it's not going off this morning. And the reason for that is that these switches don't break a connection to turn it off, they make a connection to turn it off. They short the coil so that instead of the energy going to the spark plug, it just goes to ground, you lose spark and it stops. So obviously at some point a wire was loose and is now come apart, so let's fix that too. I've got a separate video on these kill switches. See if, here we go. Interesting. So once it gets connected, it goes off. I was actually playing with that. Maybe when I put it on, I missed and had it outside the spade connector. Yeah, might have done that. So it's just worth noting, these switches are make a connection to turn the engine off, break a connection to let it start. Slight change of plan for video. Pedley and I are going to go and move Pete's Halverson onto Dave's mooring.
Streamlined haircuts.
Yes, we had both streamlined haircuts.
Oh, my God.
Oh, watch my boy!
Oh, it's still left.
Oh, mate. That was going to cost you. All right, do you want me to jump on with the boat hook and...
Yeah, let's do it. Do I turn it backwards?
Yeah. It'll give you more steerage, but your prop won't bite as well. Well, look, put it this way, tow it backwards, and if you can, great, and if you can't, turn around.
Yeah, okay.
Alright, little job done. Now let's do this roller, and then Pedal said he's getting the gurney out, so I'm going to clean the hull of Red Dwarf, it's filthy. Last week people were asking about the jellyfish floating past, so I thought I'd show you those really quickly. Alright, let's just countersink the bolt holes here so that the chain doesn't hit the bolts. Pretty flush now. I'll grab some nylox and we'll get this installed, see how it goes. I've got a fair bit of overhang, so if it wears away, you know, we don't get down to metal straight away. I think this metal probably is strong enough to just stick out and have a roller, cut the bottom out so the roller hangs down below. So I'll have a look for something. I'll measure this distance so I can find a suitable roller. In the meantime, this will just stop me damaging the Dyneema rope and knocking the gal coating off the chain. Let's drop it down and see if it's a bit quieter. Interim fix, but better than nothing. Can probably just get this part from Savage, to be honest with you. I might give them a call. But you can see it tapers down here, so we definitely need to cut the bottom out. A lot of people have been commenting about using the magnet to find the anchor, but the anchor is marine grade stainless, so the magnet won't help in that situation, unfortunately. Here, for example, is the chain I bought, not magnetic at all, and this is likely to be a similar grade chain that's on our anchor and the anchor chain, so no luck with the magnet. Next job for me to do was to finish up the junction box for the solar cell connections. Now, the lid. Lid comes with a little gasket to keep the water out, although I will put a drain hole in it because water's going to get in it for sure. It's mostly about a bit of UV and mechanical protection, to be honest, given that the MC4 connectors are waterproof as they are. Once all the wires were through the conduit into the glands, it was really just a case of reconnecting the original Y connectors and then buttoning it back up. Alright, there we go. Not quite sure where I'm going to secure it. Actually, it's kind of a tight fit under there, so I think we'll come out a bit, but once I finish repairing the roof, I'll probably just Sikaflex that down, because you can always still open the top and access everything. It's a little bit squeezy, but I'm going to put another battery switch in here that's going to be for nothing other than turning the inverter off. This way we can turn the 24 volt house off, which I'll do now while we cut this wire, and turn everything off, or we can leave house on and just isolate the inverter, the AC side, if we ever need to. I think it's worth having that feature. Given the proximity to some of the other negatives, I put these big positives into conduit to give them a little bit of extra protection while I'm here. Along the same lines, I'm just going to slightly reroute this positive here, which is actually from the 12 volt, so let's turn that off. If I put it this way, it's not going to be against those negatives. So we can turn inverter off, 12 volt back on, 24 volt back on, inverter off, and now inverter on. Cool. That could come in handy if we have an AC fault at some stage. What do we got here? This is temporary for the water still. That needs to be connected properly. This is a ground going back that way, so that can be rerouted to by the looks of it. Last night I had one of those classic steel boat owner nightmares about stray current, electrolysis, corrosion. So let's quickly measure if there's any current flowing between the bonding strap and the hull. Okay, so I've got positive into the milliamp socket on my multimeter, common into common, got it set to milliamps, DC. Now I've got my negative onto the hull, which is just the metal of the hull. Okay, so we don't have any current flowing between the bonding strap from the negative to the hull at all, which is a good thing. So we've got no current flowing between the hull and battery negative, and we had a good value on our silver half cell test to see if the anodes are working. So I think at the moment we're in pretty good shape from a corrosion point of view, so that's good to know. Okay, time to give Red Dwarf a little gurney too. You can see the hull, it's a little bit overdue. See, Eddie's the only one who understands my hours and hours of searching underwater for things with no value. Keep going, Eddie. You'll get it. He gets right out there in the deep, pulls all sorts of things to shore. He just gets them with his paw and rolls them till they reach the shore. Ugh, now it's raining. It's a bit oystery here, Eddie. The trick is to look for places with no oysters that aren't slippery. Worst oyster cut I ever had was a bit of a rookie mistake, slipping on some slime and then having my foot shoot out across the oysters. Never done that again since. You learn fast enough. Well, thanks for watching. So ends another pretty miserable wet week, but we got a few things done, which is good. Once again, a lot happened this week that wasn't in this video. A bit more work on the Vetus heat exchangers, a little bit more underwater searching, making a new, better grapple for finding this anchor, all sorts of stuff like that. Anyway, take care, and I'll catch you next week. See ya. Made yourself a new nest, Staffy. Looks like a comfy little spot. I can get you some worms, but I feel like I'm going to make you get up. And I know your leg gets sore, but I know you like food more. Should we get worms? You're a disgrace. You've been digging in the mud. You've got grass on the back of your head. Look at that. Oh my God. You're a mess. There we go. Oh well, it has been raining. It's not hardly a surprise. Got your own little distant perch. Yeah.